Experts say South Africa's economic revival depends on digital inclusion for all South Africans. The over-reliance on card payments to facilitate online and other transactions continues to exclude a large portion of the country's consumer market. To unpack this, I'm joined by Dan Buntman, the Head of Strategy and Compliance at Ozow. A very good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us.
Morning, how are you doing?
I'm awesome, thank you. Just talk to us then about digital inclusion, what it is exactly and its importance in reviving the economy.
Thanks, John. Yes, pleasure to be here. Digital inclusion is a core part of financial inclusion, and what that is I think as we've been through the COVID period and the difficulties of lockdown, we've lived our lives through a digital window. And, you know, not everyone's had that luxury, mainly office workers and sort of, in an American sense, white-collar workers. But there are lots of people out there who've had to live in the face-to-face economy and haven't had the ability to live through this digital window. But what it has taught us is that everyone needs access to digital services, and especially in the world of financial payments and just finance in general, financial services, people need access to digital services such as payment in our environment, but everything else as well.
And what would you say are the main barriers then that South Africans are facing in terms of getting access to this digital world?
So I think firstly it starts with what you mentioned earlier in terms of cards. 9% of South Africans, or 1/8, have a credit card, but 80% of South Africans have a bank account. And it's really important to include the large majority of the portion of South Africans who don't have credit cards in the ability to make payments and appreciate and enjoy many financial services as part of the ongoing, national imperative and Reserve Bank imperative to increase access for all people to the financial system. And why that's important is, South Africa needs to become an ever more consumer-led economy, and we need to enable and empower consumers to participate in the economy, which, due to a lack of digital access, many people do not have at the moment.
I've actually observed that some bank cards, although not credit cards, they're debit cards, so you know that you're not spending money you don't have, actually have a chipped feature where you are able to make online payments with them. Would you say that's a step in the right direction in terms of allowing that 80% of those who do have bank accounts and bank cards to be able to access this digitization?
I certainly do, and I think the banks and all the players in the system have worked really hard to create the inclusion, and a great measure of that is the fact that bank account statistic that I mentioned is roughly double what it was about 10, 15 years ago. So banks and the system are doing really well. What we as a fintech, a technology company that works in finance, in the realm of finance, we're trying to extend that in ways like being able to pay with reverse billing and many other features that make it quicker and easier and augment what's already been done to improve the situation.
Can you then break down how exactly this digital inclusion is going to help to rebuild the economy as it begins to reopen?
So I think there are many journeys and use cases and examples of where this can work. What we foresee is enabling people across the economic spectrum, and where they are, for example, in shops, not just online, but also online, to avail themselves of the benefits. So if I start with online, for me, one of the amazing attributes that online access and online shopping presents, it's not just buying, say, technology gadgets, that for some people that's great, but it's also enabling people who don't have the time, who work a full day, like a domestic worker or a laborer, to enable and avail them of the access to the system whereby they could, say, get a groceries delivery to where they live. They wouldn't have to go to the shops, on their day off, spend the morning on their day off, need maybe 2 seats on a taxi to come back. We've seen at Ozow how surprised and awed people are at the ability when you open up access to them. So a lot of people in South Africa do have smartphones, but not everyone is privileged to have, a very new smartphone or the best smartphone. And a lot of smartphones don't have space for downloading apps. So one of the solutions that we've proposed is a progressive web app, which is a fancy way of saying it's not really an app that you download, but you access page by page. We've done in create inclusion as well, is to make that zero-rated or reverse build so that the data is not required by the consumer making the transaction, but rather paid for by us enabling transaction. These are many ways and as to how we can open the economy in a fair way to all that is based on capturing what digital is bringing to the world.
And how long do you think it will take the government to actually achieve this sort of inclusion, especially when a lot of citizens are still actually in a place where they don't have basic services delivered to them by the government?
I think that is a challenge. I think we all, whether it's government or corporate or all of us in our individual lives in South Africa, appreciate the challenge of service delivery. And there are many aspects in our lives, I think, as a society in this country where we have to balance multiple deliveries. But in my mind, it can't be one or the other. We need to plan and work together to make sure it's all of them. So whether it's water or streets or electricity, it must be collectively achieved as a society with the aid of government and the direction of government and the leadership of government for us to provide it for all our fellow citizens.
Do you also think, lastly, that government should try and drive all of the potential consumers in the continent as well to invest in South Africa, in South Africa's economy?
I think the way we do that is by creating a fertile breeding ground for commerce and for enabling people. And I always say a financial transaction is really just about a relationship between people. So as we foster more, I think we will become an even better ground for more investment. I also think, related to your question, what's very important is we do need to focus on creating digital infrastructure such as broadband for all. In the same way, I think often people like to joke that Wi-Fi is a human right, but I do believe, not to get into the discussion of whether it's a human right or not, but our development as a nation and as a continent will explode the more digital access we provide, again, whether it's by government or through private citizens or through each of us in our own activity or through corporates like ours, where the whole country and the whole continent will benefit with the greater digital access for all.
Well, thank you very much for joining us and sharing those insights with us, Dan Buntman, the Head of Strategy and Compliance at Ozow.